This is Crime, Mr. Wade, bringing you the stories. Stay tuned for a lot more. Today's unfortunate story is about a Luis Alfredo Garavito Cubilis, also known as the La Besita, the Beast, or the Tribline Goofy, was a Colombian serial killer, sex offender, pedophile, and necrophilia. In October year of 1999, he confessed to committing rape, torture, mutilation, and murder of 147 minors, predominantly young men and boys in Western Colombia. Garavito and his siblings were neglected. He described his father as a womanizer, and his parents fought frequently. He claimed he had the misfortune of being in a family that spent its time arguing, fighting, and throwing words of great caliber, and that his father physically abused his family. Consequently, Garavito and his siblings hid from their father. As a child, he shared the bed with his father and speculated he was fondled. Garavito claimed his strict father only brought him for work-related purposes and errands, and that his father frequently berated him. Attending Simone Bolivar School in Sicilian, he was ridiculed by other children and struggled to learn subjects. Nicknamed Garabato, meaning squiggle, for his glasses, Garavito eventually preferred playing alone at recess, acting out aggressively towards students who chased and mocked him by screaming squiggle. This distressed Garavito, and he represented this in belittling his father. After stoning the birds, Garavito suggested to his younger brothers and sisters that they sleep with him naked in their shared bed. He then sexually fondled his younger siblings as they slept on multiple occasions after removing their clothes. Garavito has alleged molested a 6-year-old boy in the year of 1969. According to those who knew him, Garavito became very withdrawn, extremely aggressive, and ready to take revenge on the world. The pharmacist's sexual abuse ended after the family's relocation to Trujillo in the year of 1971 and rendered Garavito sexually impotent with women and permanently unable to ejaculate properly. He did not disclose the experiences until adulthood for fear his family would not believe him. Soon after arriving in Trujillo, Garavito was allegedly shown heterosexual pornography by other neighboring family friends. Because he responded with disgust, Garavito was beaten into the undergrowth and sexually assaulted. In the year of 1972, he aggressively attempted to initiate sexual relations with several women. Garavito suffered symptoms of psychosis, paranoia, and depression, and began compulsively molesting both male and female children, developing an almost exclusive preference for pubescent boys. Due to depression and suicidal feelings related to his lack of achievement, he expressed desire to start a family and insisted on having sexual intercourse with his female partners when drunk. Despite this, Garavito suffered from erectile dysfunction, which caused him extreme grief, and he often ranted as his hatred for his family to them. Garavito was an alcoholic and began participating in Alcoholics Anonymous meetings in the year of 1978, converting to the Pentecostal faith and working as a clerk at a store where he reconnected with his girlfriend, Luz Mary. Drifting from his family, he was only close to his older sister, Esther, who avoided him during his alcoholism times. Garavito also had conflict with his younger siblings over the father's favor to them. Relocating to the town of Armenia, he acquired a new job at a local bakery. Garavito frequently visited church services where he would beat his chest during prayer, attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and occasionally seeing psychiatrists before ending his day by frequenting Valencia Park to procure to look for the services of child prostitutes. Throughout the year in the 80s, following his crimes and discovering Adolf Hitler's book, Mein Kampf, Garavito became fond of Hitler upon discovering similarities in his traumatic childhood, homosexual experiences, and years spent in vagrancy. These fondness developed in idolization, expressing admiration for Hitler, mass graves of the Holocaust, and stating that he liked the concentration camps. On January 25th, the year of 1984, Garavito was housed under psychiatric care for 33 days following a mental breakdown. He was prescribed medication and referred to psychotherapy for his depression. After obtaining a permit to leave on February 28, 1984, Garavito fled to Petria, where he immediately molested, burned, and bit 2 children in the sector, and before leaving their photographs with his older sister. When the children publicly identified him, Garavito fled the city. He then resumed storing scalpels, candles, and razor blades in plastic bags for future victims. Having molested and tortured more than 100 children by this time, Garavito was briefly detained for stealing jewelry from a friend. In the 1990s, between 1980 and 1982, Garavito was estimated to have raped and tortured a minimum of 200 youths, as a period during which he had actively spent 5 years under psychiatric care, having attempted suicide several times. Wherever Garavito had resided during his time, local reports of child molestation increased substantially. Garavito first murdered a 13-year-old Juan Carlos on October 4th, year of 1992, and began wearing various disguises in order to evade identification and arrest. Known locally as Goofy, a generous man who gave to children in Trujillo, locals went out of their way to keep documents for Garavito. For years, Garavito documented his crimes by tickets, receipts, clothes, and identity cards of victims in a black cloth suitcase. Garavito left the suitcase with his sister Esther before leaving to go to Luz Marie, his girlfriend. He also collected their amputated toes before disposing of them for fear that the Colombian National Police sent dog teams may trace to him. In June year of 1996, Garavito complained to his girlfriend of losing his temper and temporary job as a salesman for air fresheners, begging for a place to stay in exchange for food and financial relief. Wary of Garavito for his alcoholism and temper, his girlfriend took him in briefly for hesitance. Garavito then suffered a hard fall in the neighborhood of Bogota, breaking his leg in August of the year of 1996. Stricken with pain, he resided temporarily with a man before begging his girlfriend to let him stay at her residence once again. Restricted by having to use crutches, wear a neck brace, and a cast, Garavito resorted to begging on the street for 2 months. He then resided with her. Garavito began to feel apathy for his sex crimes. On October 4th, year of 1992, he had spotted 13-year-old Juan Carlos walking near a bazaar where he had been drinking. According to Garavito, the reflection of the moonlight in the river had invoked a strange force within him, reminding him of his childhood and enraging him. He followed the child, buying synthetic rope and a butcher's knife on the way, before offering him work for 500 or 1,000 pesos. Carlos left the crowded area in Humandi with Garavito to go to a remote area near the local railroad, where he was later found with his front teeth knocked out, severe cuts to his rectum and throat, and his genitals severed. Garavito alleged he blacked out and wept upon discovering blood on his clothes in the morning. Garavito was also said to have operated in Ecuador during the summer of the year of 1998, when he murdered 14-year-old Abel Gustavo Luer Veliz, a local shoe shiner and paperboy, on the 20th of July, year of 1998, and a 12-year-old Jimmy Leonardo Palacios El Hundo in Chone, Ecuador. Both boys were from poor families and disappeared at noon. Garavito was subsequently spotted at the all-girls school in Santo Domingo, Ecuador, before fleeing Ecuadorian authorities who had been setting up an operation to catch him. There they found two corpses, one of whom was a young girl who had been raped, tortured, murdered, and discarded in similar fashion to that of Garavito's modus operation. Marked for his thick Colombian accent, locals spotted a foreigner drifting, begging for money in July and August of that same year. In addition, Garavito also stated that he had allegedly committed murder in Venezuela. When interviewed, Garavito, according to him, he primarily targeted children of humble background who were working class, homeless, peasants, or orphans. Garavito would look for children and lure them away by bribing them with small gifts such as money, candy, or odd jobs due to a force within him. He reportedly molested young boys with cute faces, blue or green eyes. Garavito himself boasted of his innocence-looking children with blonde skin and hair, and born and raised in largely Spanish descendant of Colombia, Garavito knew where to find his victims that fit his criteria. All the children were often molested and tortured simultaneously for prolonged periods. Victims were stabbed with screwdrivers in the buttocks, hands, and feet, having their buttocks flayed with broken blades and Garavito had placed between his fingers. While alive, Garavito severed the genitals and placed them in the child's mouth. They were extensively beaten, burned, trampled, and often showed deep cuts in the back, belly, and throat. In some cases, they were sexually abused as their intestines poured out of their belly, impaled through the anus and out the mouth, and stabbed over 100 times. Garavito would describe his climax would occur when he had decapitated the child alive or cut the throat as he finished before leaving the several genitals in the mouth of severed head. Necrophilia with the victim's corpse was also occasionally involved in the crimes, sometimes prematurely, as Garavito could only achieve orgasms by beating and stabbing his victims during intercourse. The children's bodies were all found completely naked, bearing bite marks and signs of extensive sodomy. Containers of lubricant were found near the bodies, along with empty bottles of cheap Colombian brandy. Most of the corpses showed signs of prolonged torture. During the investigations, the large number of missing children called for a widespread investigation, as these killings were not confined to a specific area. The brutality was fierce to authorities that initially hypnotized. The killings were performed and by a satanic cult of an international child trafficking ring. In spite of this, the prosecutor's office soon determined that it was likely one man to be responsible due to the prevalence of nylon cord and liquor bottle caps found at all the crime scenes. On February 6th, the year of 1999, outside the bodies of two naked children were found lying next to each other on a hill near a field. The next day, only meters away, they discovered another child's body. All three bodies had their hands bound, bore signs of sexual abuse. The victims' necks were severely cut and bruises were on their backs, genital, legs, and buttocks. The murder weapon was found in the same area as the bodies. Garavito had passed out partially naked on top of a child's corpse while drunk with a cigarette in his left hand, causing the cane field to catch fire. He burned himself severely in the process and left behind his money, burnt glasses, shorts, shoes, and underwear. Receipts and notes containing was also found. Garavito was picked up by local police just days later on an unrelated charge of attempted rape against a 12-year-old John Sabogal. On April 22nd, year of 1999, Garavito was drinking brandy in the evening when he encountered Sabogal selling lottery tickets in the city of Valencia. Introducing himself as a beneficio, Garavito proceeded to seize Sabogal with a knife before threatening the child into silence. Pretending to hug him, escorted him into a taxi before forcing him to climb a barbed wire fence that led to a secluded hillside. At this location, Garavito proceeded to bind, where repeatedly screaming, "I am a sadist." He then taunted the child with the blade, shouting various obscenities as he masturbated all over him. While Garavito was out of his cell, detectives took DNA samples from his pillow and the living area. The DNA found on the victims was a match to the DNA found in Garavito's cell. Garavito was interrogated for over 12 hours in October. A detective read aloud his crimes until he cried and explained that he would get drunk and look for young boys. He affirmed that he was not homosexual, but was a victim of childhood sexual abuse and would rape young boys before murdering them, confessing to about 140 children in various locations. He was found guilty of 138 of the 172 accounts. Garavito was sentenced to 1,853 years and 9 days in prison, the lengthiest sentence in Colombian history. However, Colombian law limits imprisonments for 40 years, and because Garavito helped police find the victims' bodies, his sentence was further reduced to just 22 years. Garavito served his sentence in a maximum security prison in the department of El Cesar in Colombia. He was held separately from all other prisoners because it was feared that he would be killed immediately. He could have become eligible for parole in the year of 2023, when he had served 3/5 of his sentence. In 2021, a judge blocked the request to release Garavito early for good behavior on grounds that he had not paid a fine for his victims. Garavito remained hopeful, having expressed to Colombian senator plans to enter Colombian Congress, enter the ministry as a Pentecostal pastor, and marry a woman in hopes that he could be able to help abused children upon release. Garavito suffered from severe eye cancer and leukemia, which left him blind, weak, and fatigued, requiring daily blood transfusions. He spent most of his time making handcuffs, earrings, and necklaces in the medical unit at the prison. Psychiatrists diagnosed him with antisocial personality disorder and noted narcissistic personality traits. Garavito died at the hospital in the prison on October 12th, year of 2023, at the age of 66. I hope you enjoy this unfortunate story. I'm Mr. Wade and Mrs. Crime. And once again, we bring it to you.